This is the Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis.
A question that I seem to repeat time and time again. The NBA is about the haves and the have-nots. Only a few elite teams seem to have the ability to compete for an NBA title. Joe, honestly, is there any chance that the next champion of the NBA is not the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors, or the San Antonio Spurs?
There's always a chance, but I'd say it's about 1% right now. As you mentioned, the haves and have-nots, we have not seen this NBA season anything to show us that anyone other than one of those three teams can really compete. Cavaliers were the favorites coming into the season, Warriors number 2. Spurs right there. You had some teams like the Clippers and the Rockets there. We've seen how the Rockets have had a horrible start, kind of fallen apart, and Kevin McHale was released as their coach recently. We've seen the Clippers struggle with injury. That can obviously change. It's 11, 12 games into the season. But having said that, haves and have-nots, those three teams that you mentioned are at such a high level, playing head and shoulders above everyone else. It's really not looking like, barring catastrophic injury, anything is going to keep them from playing in the Western Conference Finals in the case of Spurs and Warriors, and then playing in the finals in the case of one of those teams and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So is it bad for the league that there's only, at the end of the day, 3 teams in contention? You have over 20-plus teams that know deep down, their fan base knows they're not going to be playing in June. Is it good for the league that there's only those 3 teams? Back in the day when the Bulls were winning 6 out of 8 titles, the league didn't seem to mind that. It seemed to work out well for ratings. Fans enjoyed that. But is it different this time around, or again, is it good that there's that 3 top team elite level and everyone else is under that?
I think it's good. Not necessarily that there's the elite level and the divide, but the parity between all of the other teams. Looking up and down the standings right now, and again, it's early on, but up and down the standings, the vast majority of the NBA is a game above 500, at 500, or a game below 500. So out of the teams in the league, the vast majority in both the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference are at the same place as one another. And they're going to beat each other up, they'll make the playoffs, and it'll be exciting. So I think the parity, if it was really good teams and really bad teams, then it would be hurting the league. But it's more like a lot of decent teams and good teams, and then 3 outstanding teams, and then the Brooklyn Nets, the 76ers, the Pelicans, some terrible teams record-wise. So I also think one thing that's making it good for the NBA that I don't think was predicted as much going into the season, scoring is up across the board. Fast break points, 3-point shooting, all of these offensive statistics that make the game more exciting, even the bad teams are doing them. Obviously not well, and the bad teams are lacking defense. But the numbers are up across the board, and I think when you combine the parity with a lot of middle-of-the-pack teams playing well enough and better than the past couple of years, you combine that with the style of play, which is unquestionably more exciting and more fast-paced, while still keeping all of the star power from last year. I think that makes it for a better product. And one big complaint about the NBA versus college basketball is always the NBA is a selfish league. It's about superstars. You don't get the team play. Well, the 3 top teams no question they have their superstars, LeBron, Steph Curry, the Spurs with a lot of 1A guys, Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then their older stars. No question those teams have the superstars, but they're all team players. The Spurs are one of the best team-playing franchises in the past 20 years. The Warriors may have the best chemistry that any professional sports league, has seen in decades. And Cleveland, while it's built around LeBron, it's all a team effort to get them to this point, especially with the injuries they've faced. So that's also a great thing for the league. It's exciting basketball. A lot of teams are competitive, if not at the pedestal, and it's about team basketball while still having the star power.
Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. We're talking NBA with Joe Robbins, our North American correspondent. I want to go to the San Antonio Spurs for a few minutes because they added some free agent power in the past few years, guys that have taken less money because they want to win. I wonder if you talk a bit about that in more detail because you usually don't see that nowadays. You saw that a bit in the 90s, once in a while the 2000s, but you wouldn't think you would see that in 2015. Why exactly is that? What is so special about the San Antonio Spurs? The guys would go there and take a pay cut.
A huge part is Greg Popovich. Coach Pop, with the system he's implemented, showing that anybody can become a star and everyone's a contributor. You have Kawhi Leonard, who was a first-round pick, but people expected would take some time to develop. He becomes a superstar without having to put up superstar numbers because of the way the system is built. And that's not a slight at all at Kawhi Leonard. The opposite. It's him being able to play in the system and be so unselfish and not have the ego. It's Danny Green, a second-round pick, making $10 million a year, which obviously is a ton of money, especially for a second-round pick, but he took less money than he could have gone from the Spurs and even less money than he could have gone from other people to stay with the Spurs and play in that system, knowing that he would average under 10 points a game in limited minutes, but be an integral part of a contender. It's LaMarcus Aldridge, like you mentioned. He could have made a lot more money staying in Portland, max contract, being the face of the franchise. He leaves to come to San Antonio and play the fewest moments of his career so far. Things that we just don't see in today's NBA, like you mentioned, but it all works because of R.C. Buford, the general manager extraordinaire of the Spurs, and Greg Popovich, the coach, who will go down as one of the greatest coaches of all time. It's the chance to play with their veterans, Hall of Famers, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili. And their young up-and-coming stars. Patty Mills, another guy. He was out of St. Mary's. He was a second-round pick by the Portland Trailblazers, and he struggled initially. He kind of bounced around, had some injury problems. Well, he's become a star for San Antonio, and even though he's only playing 20 minutes a game, he chose to take less money and play fewer minutes to stay with the Spurs. So when you've got real glue guys like that and you're drafting well, like they have, and again, drafting well for the Spurs doesn't mean getting a superstar necessarily. It means getting a guy who fits into the system and allowing him to grow into maybe a superstar, but at the very least grow into a guy who's going to be a star for them. So they got Kyle Anderson, superstar potential guy out of UCLA. But again, they don't need him to come in and be a star right away. As a rookie, he averaged 11 minutes a game last year. He's averaging 9.5 minutes a game this year, and that's totally fine for the Spurs.
We're joined by Joe Robbins, our North American correspondent, and let's stay with the Spurs for a few more minutes because it seemed for years that people were predicting their downfall. Now, last year they lose in the first round, but a break here, a break there, the ball a few inches short or long, and they may have won the title last year. They were that well run, and we know they went to the finals in 2013, 2014 they won. Talk a bit about the Spurs' future. Many people are suspecting this is Duncan's last year. Some even think Duncan and Joe Popovich will ride out together in the sunset, especially if they win the NBA title. So talk a bit about the future of the San Antonio Spurs.
I think the biggest key is whether Greg Popovich leaves with Duncan and what that means for Ginobili and Tony Parker as well. They've all been playing a long time. They're all getting up there. Ginobili and Duncan definitely are older than Parker, but Parker's played a lot of years, and he's playing limited minutes this year compared to what he's done in his career because of the great depth that the Spurs have at point guard. I think one of the key things that R.C. Buford did was, in addition to drafting guys who would be able to turn into stars and superstars like Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard as a superstar, he also brought in LaMarcus Aldridge, a bona fide superstar, who's playing fewer minutes because they have Duncan playing the same positions, but he's a guy when Duncan, one of the greatest power forwards of all time, retires, you've got LaMarcus Aldridge, a multi-time all-star and franchise player you can build around. So as long as they keep bringing in guys who can come up, you've got Patty Mills. Is he a long-term replacement for Tony Parker? Probably not. They probably go in and get a superstar point guard, but they'll be able to attract someone like that, and they'll have the cap space to do that once some of their veteran contracts come off of the books. So, long term for the Spurs, will they be championship caliber? I'd say not without Greg Popovich necessarily. Maybe they lure away another great coach. Maybe they get a young coach who's got the same mentality and can continue it. And they'll have a shot to contend, but from the personnel side, they're definitely building a team that can be a contending team as they retire some of the old parts and fill them in with these superstars. The big question is, can that continue? Can you attract a LaMarcus Aldridge when there's no Coach Popovich? I think they will be able to. It's going to come down to continuing the chemistry that Popovich has built.
All right, let's go out to the Eastern Conference right now. We'll come back to the West later on. Cleveland Cavaliers, we know David Blatt from Israel, of course, led Maccabi Tel Aviv to a European championship. Also led the Russian team very well in the Olympics. Year one, a bit bumpy, even though a trip to the NBA Finals occurred under his watch. Different disputes with LeBron James. So let's say hypothetically they go back to the NBA Finals but don't win an NBA championship. Would that mean it's the door for David Blatt?
I don't think so. I think David Blatt will stay as the Cavaliers coach at least into next season. He's done a great job. He's a fantastic coach. There are going to be a lot of naysayers, but the Cavaliers last year, it was LeBron's first year back. It was Kevin Love's first year in Cleveland with him. Same with some of the other players. They made the huge trade mid-season to get Mozgov after they lost some key players in the front court, specifically Anderson Varejao. So there was a lot going on that had the team in transition, in addition to having a rookie head coach in the NBA. He's too good of a coach to get thrown out for losing in the finals. That was my stance last year. Obviously, it came to be, and I think it'll continue to be the case. David Blatt has had success everywhere he's gone. The Cavs are having success. They're not having the problems early on that they had last year, even with other injury concerns. LeBron last year came in overweight. He looked sluggish. He didn't look like the same LeBron coming out of the offseason. We haven't had those same problems that this year. Mo Williams has been really good as a point guard, filling in for different injured players, doing what he needed to do, allowing other people to come in as much as possible and keep the team where it needs to be for right now. And it's crazy thinking that Kyrie Irving is out, a bona fide superstar point guard, and the Cavaliers are still doing this well. It would be crazy for anyone who thought David Blatt wasn't a good coach, but that's the answer. He's doing what needs to be done to keep this team competitive and contending. And, the Cavaliers are always going to have things that they could do better, like any team. LeBron is always going to be unhappy about some things, like most superstars. Having said that, the team's 8-3, tied for the lead in the Eastern Conference, and really showing, even though their record is the same, they're not the same level. They're a level above the rest of the Eastern Conference competition. So they might face some adversity throughout the year, but I don't think they'll have as many of the same questions about David Blatt. I think he's also learned what it means to be an NBA coach more. He's learned what it means to coach LeBron James and some other superstars. They've gotten the rotation worked out in terms of getting Kevin Love happier seemingly with his minutes than last year. His production is up from last year so far. He's back to the Kevin Love that we saw before he came to Cleveland. His shooting isn't quite there, but in all other facets of his game it is. And I think we'll see Cleveland continue to do well, and regardless of the outcome in the playoffs, even if they underachieve by some people's standards and by the league standards, frankly, David Blatt is the right coach for this team for at least another year.
All right, what are the strategies I want to discuss with you regarding the Cleveland Cavaliers, since they don't really have much competition in the Eastern Conference, and LeBron a little bit up there in age? Not that he's so old on the senior circuit, but he's played a lot of years, played since he's 18 years old, not to mention 5 NBA Finals in a row. Would the smart move be to sit him down a bit, watch his minutes, monitor him, so he can be ready to go in May and hopefully June if you're a Cleveland fan?
I think so. You make a great point. LeBron is 30 years old, which isn't old by NBA standards or any professional sports standards unless you're a running back in the NFL. Also, LeBron is maybe the greatest athletic specimen that the game has ever seen. Having said that, LeBron has broken the record at each point in his career, each new age milestone. He's played the most minutes out of any NBA player in history up to that age, and also up to that amount of games and that many seasons. The reason being, like you said, the finals he's played in, the playoffs, his success. It's a blessing and a curse in terms of his body, how much he's able to take on, how much of the load he's able to shoulder, and how many minutes he's able to play. But also, the success he's had has meant he's played a lot more games.
Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio. The email arilewisshow@hotmail.com. And, of course, the station's email address, israelsportsandnewsradio@gmail.com. We're talking NBA basketball with Joe Robbins, our North American correspondent. Let's go out to California, talk about your Warriors, the defending champions. One of the best seasons in NBA history last year with rookie head coach Steve Kerr now in his second year. What is the expectation at this point? Obviously, they're the defending champions, and we know Curry, MVP, the defending MVP, and some say the greatest shooter of all time. I want to talk about that aspect. Is he a better shooter than Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, etc.? Talk a bit about the shooting touch of the reigning MVP.
He's the greatest shooter of all time in terms of what he's able to do. When you break down what he's able to do, it's his ability to create his own shot, needing virtually no space and no time. It's the wow factor of the shots he's able to make and the shots that he takes with confidence because he can make them. It's doing things that have never been done before in terms of creating off the dribble. Now, when you say that Curry is the greatest shooter of all time, it is definitely no disrespect to the legends, to Larry Bird, to Reggie Miller, even to guys who didn't do it at the same level but were known for that shooting stroke. Curry has the quickest release, according to sports science and different studies that have been done analyzing his game. He's got the quickest release in NBA history. But, like I mentioned, he also is able to create his own shot in ways that really nobody else has been able to do before. When you add to that the fact that he's stopped taking long-range twos this season and has started driving more, you really get to a point where he's unguardable. And when that happens, that's what puts you in that level. It's one thing to take the most shots, but he's made the most. Curry has more three-pointers made this season. Going into the last game, he had more three-pointers made this season than 4 NBA teams had total. Combined, every player on the team hadn't hit as many as Curry, and he's hitting it at over 45%. So I think it's the combination of what he's doing statistically with the eye test, with the way he's able to do it. Curry has the record for most three-pointers in an NBA season, a record, his own record, which he's broken 2 times already. This year, now again, it's early on into the season, but this year he's on pace to break that record at the All-Star break, and he's shooting over 50% from the field. Only 19 players in NBA history have ever shot 50% from the field and 45% from three-point range for an entire season. Steve Nash, considered one of the greatest shooters of all time, statistically anyway, and again, Nash is one of the greatest point guards of all time because of his passing, but his shooting was incredible too. Nash was known for being the only player to shoot 50% from the field, 40% from three-point land, and 90% from the free throw line. His 50-90-40 stat line is a shooter's dream. Curry this year is at 50, 90, and 45. And there's no indication of him slowing down. So I think when you combine everything, is he the greatest shooter of all time? At this point, if he were never to play another game, I still think he'd be top 3. But if he continues doing it, I think there's no question. And I think it's gone to the point where he's not only showing that he can break records, he's reinventing the game every night, which is something that those other guys, some of them did, some of them didn't, but Curry's able to do it, and he's able to do it as a point guard, which is pretty scary to be that efficient. And right now, again, early in the season, but his efficiency rating is PER, which is a metric that the statisticians love nowadays and really shows you a player's impact on the game. Right now, his PER is at 15. For comparison, is at 35. For comparison, the greatest seasons in NBA history, which unsurprisingly belong to Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, and Michael Jordan, the best any of them ever had was a 31. So Curry is blowing it out of the water, and really it's because of the way he continues to get better after being an MVP last season and continues to reinvent the game as it's unfolding before our eyes.
All right, again, this is the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio, joined by Joe Robbins, our North American correspondent. At the end of the day, the MVP trophy is at Steph Curry's to lose. If he doesn't win the MVP this year, would that surprise and shock you?
Definitely. The main caveat, like with the Warriors' record and all these discussions so early in the season, is health. But assuming he stays healthy, it is definitely his to lose. He's having the greatest statistical season of all time. In addition to that, he's infinitely better, incredibly, but somehow he is infinitely better than he was last year when he won the MVP. You know, you look at recent games, Russell Westbrook had a 30-plus point, 9-assist game in a win. James Harden had a 45.9-assist game in a win. Now, Harden hasn't had as good of a season, but Westbrook is averaging 20 and 10 and close to a triple-double. He has been fantastic, and no one's even talking about it other than when Oklahoma City plays, because Curry has been so far and above. So while last year there were questions, should Curry have won it? Should James Harden have won it? This year, especially when you throw in the Warriors' record, the records they're setting as a team, it's definitely Curry's record and award to lose with what he's doing. No one's averaged this high of a point total since Kobe Bryant in 95-96. No one's done the 50-90-45 shooting line. All the different things come into it. If he continues this level of play and even drops off a little bit, no one's going to be touching him for the award. We'll see a unanimous MVP for the first time in years.
All right, we're going to take a break. One more segment with Joe Robbins. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. Email arilewishow@hotmail.com. You can email the station, Israel Sports and News Radio @gmail.com. We'll be right back after this.
The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Proud pleasure and privilege to bring on our next guest. He is baseball's all-time hit king. Please give a warm Lewis Line welcome to Pete Rose. Pete, welcome to Israel Sports Radio.
Thank you, and appreciate you having me on. And how you doing? What's going on?
You have over 4,100 hits. Can your record actually be broken?
You know, in order to break my record, you have to play 21 years to get 200 hits each year,
right,
and you'd still be 56 shy. So, you know, but you never know. Another freak like me might come along in the 2020s or so, something like that. But I think it's kind of safe to say that I'll die as the hit king.
Former heavyweight champion of the world, the greatest pound-for-pound boxer in the history of boxing,
Roy Jones Jr. Roy, welcome to Israel Sports Radio.
Hey, thank you, brother. So nice to be on Israel Sports Radio. How y'all doing over there?
This has been a lot of fun, Roy. We really appreciate you coming on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio. Good luck in the fight coming up about a week and a half. I don't think you really need that much, but hey, I'll say good luck to you anyways.
Hey, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. I think all my fans in Israel that supported me. Demetri Toledo for hooking us up, and you guys take it easy and have a good day, okay?
Amari, Andy Gershman from Israel Sports Radio. How are you doing? Just wanted to welcome you to Israel. Did you ever think there'd be this kind of crazy whirlwind with you walk into the country?
I didn't expect it. I came here to study history and all coaches in it. And I didn't expect it. Great.
Proud to introduce Dan Schulman. Dan, how you doing out there?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us what it's like, or tell our listeners really what it's like to be partnered up with Dick Vitale?
It's exactly what it looks like on TV. He's the most energetic person you'll ever meet in your life, and it's like being on a ride at an amusement park. You just never quite know what's going to happen next, but you know it's going to be fun and exciting.
Coach Steven, when you went into the season, at the start of the season, you had that year in 2009, 2010, you had a Gordon Hayward, Shelvin Mack, and I believe you also had
Matt Howard.
Matt Howard, absolutely, Matt Howard.
Yep.
When you went into the season, you were ranked 10th in the coaches poll. When you went in the locker room, was your goal to make it to the Final Four?
No, I didn't think we were any good, to be honest with you. We went to Italy in the summer on a foreign trip, and the Swiss national team pounded us twice.
Three-time World Series champion Kurt Schilling, 216 wins in the regular season, over 3,000 strikeouts. Are you a Hall of Fame player?
You know what? No, I played with Hall of Famers, and I know what they look like. I played with Randy Johnson. I played with Pedro Martinez, and I can see their names and faces on plaques, and I've never been able to see mine.
The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, final segment here on the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio, joined by Joe Robbins, our North American correspondent. We'll stay in California, and of course, if you're not talking about the Warriors, the biggest name in California when it comes to basketball, Kobe Bean Bryant, many suspect and expect this will be his last season. This has been dismal the past few years, especially since Kobe's Achilles injury, had another injury afterwards, made a movie in the meantime, a documentary about him. This will be Kobe's last season, right? I don't see how we can really muster up anything past this point this season.
It definitely should be. I agree with you. It's hard to see one of the greatest players of all time go out like this, and he had been so good for so many years. I mean, 3 seasons ago, he averaged 27 points and was Kobe Bryant, all-star extraordinaire, doing what he did. Since then, with the injuries, he definitely hasn't been the same. Even this season, he's shooting 34% from the field, 23% from three-point line. Unfortunately for the Lakers, he's shooting the most threes of his career, and he's doing it at the worst percentage. So really, it's tough to see as a basketball fan. It's tough to see as a Kobe Bryant fan, and I'm sure Lakers fans, it is definitely not what they wanted to see. I hope this is his last year for those reasons. On the flip side, if he can be more efficient and would be willing to leave the Lakers, which is a big if, he's averaging 17 points a game. He's showing that he can still play in this league. So it is possible. But for the sake of all concerned, and everyone who wants to see him go out on top, I think this should be his last year.
Joe, you don't really see Kobe going to another team and being a sidekick, right? That doesn't seem to be in his personality. He is much more the alpha type, even than Shaquille O'Neal, who did the sidekick thing with the Celtics and the Cavs. In fact, the Celtics, he was a bench player. I don't see Kobe Bryant doing anything like that. Do you?
No, I agree with you completely. I really don't. I think even if Kobe were to go to another team, it would be in this type of role where he averages 17 points or 15 points even if it's next year, isn't the best player on the team, but it's the Kobe Bryant show. He needs that. And I don't think another team is going to be okay with that. I don't think another team is going to pay the money to have a guard who doesn't do any of the guard things very well. He's averaging a career low since he became Kobe Bryant in assists, with his turnovers up high. He's not shooting the ball well. He's not efficient. Now, some of that you can attribute to the team around him, but more than anything, I think we can all agree, and Kobe would probably agree, it's age and his body breaking down, which is fine. That's what happens when players get old, but he needs to recognize that he needs to retire if he's not willing to move into that sidekick role that you mentioned.
So, of course, whenever this takes place, the retirement, the automatic comparisons to Michael Jordan take place. I think at the end of the day, it's interesting, but MJ appears to win in my calculations, 5 MVPs to 1, 6 NBA Finals MVPs to Kobe's 2, 6 titles to 5. Kobe's advantage, more career points, played longer, more career games. Obviously, make the comparison, if this is the end of the road for Kobe Bryant, his legacy to MJ's legacy.
I think he's a top 5 player, but I agree with you that he's no MJ. I think if you want to talk about someone giving MJ a run for his money as greatest player ever, it's Wilt Chamberlain, the most dominant player ever, who did things that will never be done again. Kobe is a guard. He is an outstanding, sensational guard who also changed the way the game was played, just like MJ did. He's one of the fiercest competitors that ever played the game, but to me, he's not as good as Wilt, which means he's not as good as Jordan was. Kobe will go down as one of the greats. Like I said, I believe he should be a top 5 player of all time. He has the stats. He has the career. He's been the face of the NBA for so long in so many ways. And he lived up to the hype coming out of high school. All of those different intangibles that come into it. Clearly, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Clearly, he's one of the greatest ever to do it. And maybe he's the best guard ever to do it after Michael Jordan, best shooting guard. But since I don't think we can even say that he's the greatest guard after Michael Jordan, I don't think we can say that he's at Jordan's level, which is fine. No one's at Jordan's level, and that's why he's Michael Jordan. So Kobe will go down with a great legacy. He'll be remembered for his game. He'll be remembered for his scoring. He'll be remembered for scoring 80-plus in one of the most amazing offensive performances of all time, statistically and otherwise. Seeing that game, Kobe's 81, was just incredible. And those are the things people will remember when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame. They won't remember the end of this, but they also won't remember him as the greatest of all time.
All right, last question before we let you go. If he's not better than MJ, again, I agree with that, is he the best player since MJ retired? I don't mean the whole Wizards thing. I mean since 1998. Obviously, Duncan's in that category. LeBron James, many people will say he's a better player. Interesting comparison in that Kobe may not be an athletic level to LeBron James, more of a clutch player, killer instinct, more titles. So who's the best player since Jordan retired in 1998?
I would give it to Kobe. Like you said, Duncan is there. I would say Kevin Garnett is there. You've got a lot of guys who are first ballot Hall of Famers, top 5 in NBA history at their position, but I think it's Kobe. he has done more for the game as a player, as an ambassador, and even just level of play. I don't think anyone is close to him, with the exception of LeBron, but LeBron has to have a career spanning the length of time Kobe did. There's no doubt in my mind that LeBron will pass Kobe, and that's not a slight at all to Kobe. That's a nod to the incredible talent and specimen that LeBron is. Physical specimen, plays the game like Magic Johnson, but to a level even greater than Johnson did, arguably, and we can have that discussion another time. But for right now, I would say definitely in my mind, there's no question Kobe is the greatest player in the NBA since Jordan retired. He'll get passed by LeBron eventually, but to me it goes Kobe. After that, I have some questions, but LeBron, Garnett, Duncan, all in the mix. LeBron will pass him. We'll see what happens with guys like Kevin Durant.
All right, there you have it. Another episode of the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest has been Joe Robbins, the founder of OMG Poetry. Go look him up on Facebook. And, of course, you can find Joe's work very often when he performs at clubs, his poetry. Joe, give us a plug of your next performance.
Thank you. Yeah, so my next performance will be at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, neweurekan.org. You can find it online. You can find me on facebook.com/OMG Poetry and on iTunes as OMG Poetry. And I'll hopefully be on a microphone near you sometime soon.
That sounds good. Certainly looking forward to that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay safe out there, obviously. And remember, of course, to enjoy life at all times. You can email me at arilewisshow@hotmail.com, or you can email the station Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. Be well, God bless, and shalom from Israel.